Welcome to Twists of Life, where every story has an unexpected turn. Stories of joy and sorrow, hope and redemption, just like the life we all live. Make yourself comfortable. It's time to begin. When would this hectic stretch of the road finally end? Joanna loved living a measured life, without rush. She didn't race to work headlong like many others, but left well in advance to choose not the shortest, but the most picturesque route, the one that led past ponds where cheeky ducks frolicked among water lilies, ready to be fed. She admired the smooth surface of the water, the boundless sky, the street flowers, and the cats she met along the way. A couple of times, engrossed in contemplation, she even arrived late. Her friend Rita would chuckle good-naturedly. "You, Jeanette, are like something out of the last century. You should have been born a young lady somewhere in the 18th century. You'd stroll under a parasol, embroider silk with satin stitch, and with a good dowry, you'd have no worries at all." "Honestly, I wouldn't mind that even now," Joanna agreed. And so, as if by irony of fate, she was about to enter into an inheritance. Her grandmother from the capital, her mother's mother-in-law, who had outlived her own son by 10 years, had passed away. Joanna felt awkward admitting to Rita that she didn't feel grief, but her friend just waved it away. "Oh, come on. You're too hard on yourself. You barely knew this grandmother. Now, I had a real grandmother, from the village. If I asked her to babysit, she'd come even on a passing truck, and with pies from a Russian oven, too. And there was so much love in her. How could I not mourn her passing? But your Ella hardly kept in touch with you all. You see, her daughter-in-law seemed unworthy to her." "Rita, about the deceased. Either speak well or nothing," Joanna reminded her. "The full saying is, about the dead, either speak well or nothing, except the truth." "You can check if you doubt it," Rita advised. She herself, apparently, didn't care about you getting to know and love her, didn't consider it necessary. It's good she at least left a will in your name. That was her act. After all, your father has some distant nephews, you mentioned. Your Ellie could have willed everything to them out of spite. But she acted humanely. So rejoice in your good fortune and remember your deceased granny with a kind word. May God grant everyone such a long and prosperous life." Indeed, Rita is right. Rejoicing in an inheritance doesn't mean rejoicing in Grandmother Ella's death. Jenny, Joanna's mother, used to call her mother-in-law the Queen of Spades. There was neither malice nor resentment in this, just a hint of respect. Ella was indeed a lady of that ilk. Perhaps it was just an artistic mask, but now that secret was gone with her forever. She lived to be 90, was married several times, increasing her fortune and useful connections with each new marriage. From her first husband, she had a son, Joanna's father. "I didn't want children. You happened by accident," she confessed to her son without a trace of embarrassment when she decided to give birth. As one of the distant relatives recounted at the wake, a week before her death, Ellie was still calling a manicurist and pedicurist. Joanna was slightly put off by such a topic at a time of sorrow, but Eugenia said that her mother-in-law herself would have taken it with complete understanding and wouldn't have been offended in the least. Rather, a satisfied smirk would have appeared on her inscrutable face. On the way home, in a third-class carriage of the train, Joanna asked her mother, "Mom, how did you manage not to feel dislike for Grandma? I understand intellectually that I shouldn't attach importance to my mother-in-law's words, but sometimes I just hate her." "Joe, you just live too close and see each other too often," Mom smiled wearily. "Pauline is a decent woman, but she has no life of her own, so she tries to intrude into yours. And what reason do I have to resent my mother-in-law? I'm grateful to Ella for never interfering in my life with your father, for not trying to separate us. Although most of my friends were sure that's what would happen. They thought that since I was from the ridiculous provinces, she would constantly remind him of it. They scared me to death. But nothing of the sort happened. Ella was too busy with herself and her life to waste time on me. A selfish mother-in-law, living for herself, is sometimes a real blessing. So I can honestly say to everyone, I had a very good mother-in-law. And for leaving an inheritance to her granddaughter, I respect her even more now. Not a petty lady, but an honest one. She didn't maintain relations for appearances, but she acknowledged you. I think she even liked you. Joanna didn't see grandmother Ella often, only about 5 or 6 times in her life, and didn't notice that she particularly liked her. No need for grandmothers, Ella told her 7-year-old granddaughter upon meeting. Just call me Ella, like everyone else. And Joanna called her like everyone else, but addressed her formally. Madam Ella had no objection to this. Are you going to tell David and his mother that Ella left you an inheritance? Eugenia asked with barely concealed pleasure, sipping strong tea from a glass in a metal holder, as if she were drinking a cocktail in an expensive bar. Mom once confessed, laughing shyly, that she had loved drinking tea on trains since childhood. It always seemed tastier to her. I won't say anything yet, Joanna shared her thoughts. The will is sealed. Its contents are unknown to anyone. Perhaps I only received some commemorative item with meaning. I didn't expect anything at all, so I'll accept any surprise with understanding. But then my mother-in-law will definitely have another reason to be displeased with me. What if now I turn out to be not only an inattentive wife and irresponsible mother, but also an unloved, unsuccessful granddaughter? Mother and daughter laughed softly, understanding each other without words. Okay, indeed. It's really not worth rushing, Mom agreed. What's ours won't go away, and we don't need what's not ours. And they agreed not to bring up the topic until the will was announced. 2 days before the date set by the notary for the announcement, Joanna's son Leo ended up in the hospital with acute poisoning. His grandmother screamed that the cause was poor quality treats at the children's birthday party Leo had been invited to. And of course, if Joanna were a truly good mother, she would monitor the families of the children her son associated with. Joanna found it amusing to imagine a 10-year-old having a dangerous circle of acquaintances, but her mother-in-law nodded seriously, just to avoid pointless arguments. The birthday boy was Leo's good friend and classmate, Ethan. If Ethan's mother, raising him alone without any help, bought a cake at a big discount, it didn't mean she was to blame for the store-bought cake being expired. But whatever the case, Leo was in the hospital, already out of danger and starting to get bored. And Joanna was just about to go to the notary for the reading of the will. David, as usual, grumbled something about her terribly inconvenient job for a family woman, but agreed to stop by and visit their son. Joanna woke up very early that morning, and while coffee simmered on low heat, twirled her train ticket in her hands, feeling sad that she couldn't visit Leo in the hospital. Of course, she understood intellectually. Tomorrow, instead of her mother, his father would visit him. But it was still sad. Life flies by so quickly. Soon Leo would stop being a child, would manage perfectly without his mother, wouldn't miss her so much, and she wouldn't even have time to remember his childhood. It was either work or some silly urgent matters. Joanna's sad reflections were interrupted by a phone call. Ms. Joanna, I apologize for the unpleasant news, the notary apologized. As I explained to you, at least 2 witnesses are required for the reading of a sealed will, but one of them is currently ill. Nothing serious happened to him? Joanna asked. My son is also in the hospital, poisoned. My sympathies. May he recover quickly? The notary replied politely. There's nothing dangerous with the witness, just a fever. But in this heat, the person is elderly, concerned about their health, and asks to postpone the date of the reading. They suggested moving it back exactly a week, if that suits you. Yes, I'll coordinate it at work, Joanna replied. not liking to be capricious or disrupt others' plans without a good reason. And today, I'll spend time with my son instead. So everything is fine. Please convey my wishes for a speedy recovery to the witness. She truly didn't care about going for some phantom inheritance while her son was in the hospital. He hadn't yet crossed that invisible line where the possibility of getting money becomes a justification for a person if they leave someone close to them bored and alone. Joanna sighed with relief, drank a second cup of coffee with milk foam, and went to visit Leo, giving him a surprise. If her son was still in pain, it should definitely pass after their meeting. The hospital elevator for visitors wasn't working, and Joanna didn't understand how to call the side one where gurneys with patients were loaded. She generally felt extremely anxious and uncomfortable in hospitals, and considered herself one of those people who could never become medics. Joanna decided to climb to the third floor she needed on foot, by the stairs. On the windows between the first and second floors, she was met by gloomy, withered roses. Hearing voices, she somehow stopped instead of going faster. The voices came from the landing between the second and third floors. Her husband David and his mother, Ms. Pauline, were talking. Hearing the very first few words, Joanna froze under the stairs and mentally thanked herself for choosing silent sneakers for this trip. David, I wouldn't wish you ill, his mother persuaded him quietly but persistently. I will always be on your side, whatever you decide. But now I ask you to take a break and not rush. Don't you yourself guess why? Mom, what's with your passion for talking in riddles? David asked, lazily annoyed. What am I supposed to guess? That your wife might now be among the heirs after the death of her Moscow grandmother. Didn't you really think about that? How have you lived to be 40, huh? Mom, don't start. You've chosen a brilliant time and place. We're actually visiting our son and your grandson in the hospital. Exactly, his mother triumphantly picked up. Don't forget that you and Joanna have a son. I'm also a living person. I understand everything perfectly, love. All that. And you know perfectly well that I don't consider having a child a red flag. Leo has a right to a father until he comes of age, and to a share of your property. And then you marry this Sarah of yours, the first infatuation will pass, and what will happen? It will turn out that she's annoyed by these alimony payments and gifts to the child, and she'll want her own child anyway. And you still have to raise Leo, and all this on your one salary. Listen, Sarah doesn't want children. She just wants to live with me openly, without this silly game of hide and seek. A woman who doesn't want children is also suspicious. Either your beauty, Sarah dear, is a complete egoist, or she's lying to you to not scare you away. Our Vanga the seer, David scoffed. You know everything about everyone. You've laid everything out on shelves. Yes, I've lived longer, and I know, his mother snapped back with her favorite phrase, which Joanna had heard many times and with which she had always wanted to argue. But family peace was more precious. Listen to your mother for once in your life. I know grandmothers like your Joanna's, all huffy-puffy, but essentially just an ordinary old woman. In old age, the same thoughts come to everyone anyway. She surely wanted to be remembered well by her granddaughter and left something. Her apartment or savings? Maybe both. No, Mom. I didn't understand that now, David interrupted Ms. Pauline. You want your son to give up the woman he loves in order to use his wife's inheritance? Do you think I'm some kind of gigolo? I think you're stupid, like a teenager, his mother replied angrily. You'd think you suffered with Joanna before meeting Sarah. You just lived your lives. And with good wealth, you'd live even better. With money, there are fewer quarrels. I don't know. And Sarah is hardly an ideal. So I see no point in swapping a needle for a poker. Did you only live with my father for that reason too? David asked sarcastically. What does that have to do with me and your father? Joanna flinched, hearing quick footsteps below. Several people were coming up the stairs quite close by. They were walking fast and talking rather loudly. David and his mother couldn't help but hear them and stopped their conversation. Joanna decided to wait until these people were level with her. She sat down and pretended that her shoelace had come undone. 2 doctors and a nurse were coming up the stairs. Joanna's shoelaces were instantly in perfect order, and she continued on her way immediately behind the medics. "Well, that's a decision," exclaimed her friend Rita with bewildered admiration, having listened to Joanna's story. "If I hadn't heard it from you yourself, I wouldn't have believed you'd decide to leave like that. And you had the patience to wait for almost a month. I wouldn't have lasted. I would have given myself away long ago. But you surprised me, Jeanette. I was sure I knew you as well as I know myself, and you're revealing a completely unexpected side." "I didn't expect it from myself either," Joanna smiled sadly. "I like to think of myself as a tender young lady who couldn't stand deciding anything on her own." "And what will you tell Leo?" "Tender young lady?" Rita thought. "Already?" "That's why I waited a month, so Leo would go away for a session at sports camp. His friend from class recently had his parents divorce, and his dad is already living with another woman. Leo told me himself. He worries about his friend, but he understands that things like that happen." "Aha, he's reasonable for his age," Rita agreed. "So I thought, if I leave now, and David will surely be living with Sarah already, I won't have to make up stories for my son. I'm already exhausted from waiting for David to honestly say, 'Now you're a well-off woman. It won't be so scary for you to be alone, and I can admit that I've fallen in love with someone else.' But he apparently decided to follow his mommy's advice after all. When he objected to her and played the noble card, he simply didn't know what my inheritance was." "Stop torturing yourself," Rita tried to stop her friend. "You talk about this every day. Have pity on yourself already." "Dear Rita, I pity myself, and I pity this Sarah. That's why I need a little more time to whine, and I'll calm down," Joanna assured her. "What is there to pity Sarah for?" Her friend snorted. "She gets involved with a married man. Be ready for all sorts of obstacles. I know my David. Well, not mine anymore. Perfectly well. He'll convince anyone of his feelings if he sets his mind to it. I remember from my own experience, and Sarah was surely confident in him. And he traded her for his wife's inheritance, for the chance to live comfortably, to buy a new car, for example. He's already starting to test the waters quietly, asking if his beloved wife would like a brand new car instead of the old one. That's when I was closer than ever to giving myself away. I look at him and think, if the elevator in the hospital had been working then, I wouldn't have overheard his conversation with his mother. I'd be living and rejoicing now. How good everything is with us. What a close-knit, loving family we are. And it's terrifying to think that I could have lived my whole life with this hypocrite, and sometimes even thought I was happy." "Everything is always so complicated with you," Rita shook her head. "You could have lived. You could have. If you found out everything, you leave yourself. You have no financial problems foreseen. That's it. Live and be happy. Something tells me that the revelation of David's character surprised you so much that you won't miss him." "Yes, I won't now," Joanna agreed calmly. "Unlike mine, it's Leo's inheritance." "Exactly." Rita raised her index finger to the sky. "So there was no other option but divorce anyway. And this way, you'll at least be the one to leave first, with a sense of victory. Yes, I approve of your decision." To be honest, Joanna herself thought her idea was very simple, without much ingenuity. When David returned from work the next day, he froze in the doorway, not knowing how to react to what he saw. Firstly, this wasn't a case where a man might not notice his wife's haircut. For as long as he had known Joanna, she had always had thick hair almost to her waist, dark blonde. Now half the length was cut off, and the unusually uneven strands styled in a lush cascade, shone with a rich, fiery dark red color. A surprised David reluctantly admitted that such changes had turned his wife into a striking beauty. In addition, she was wearing a green dress resembling a long, loose tank top, and it also suited her very well, although it bore no resemblance to her previous clothes, emphasizing her figure too much. Standing before the wide-open closet, Joanna announced to her husband instead of greeting him, "Well, I've thrown out most of the unnecessary junk, and I can leave." "Leave for where?" David asked, suddenly feeling like a fooled donkey. "To Moscow, to see my properties, both the main apartment and the studio that's rented out, and the dacha. Might as well do it all at once. I'm thinking of renting it out for a month, or maybe keeping it for myself, perhaps moving there as an option, enrolling Leo in a Moscow gymnasium." "Are you going to decide this unilaterally?" David asked pointedly about Leo. "No, of course not," Joanna reassured him. "You are his full parent. That will always be the case. But as for my real estate and bank deposit, of course, that's my decision alone." "And they gave you time off just like that?" David scoffed incredulously, trying to hide his complete bewilderment. "You're irreplaceable. You assured me yourself before." "Surprisingly, I asked for time off, and they gave it to me right away. Perhaps the management suspects I might quit now and are trying to keep me with good treatment, although I really am thinking about quitting and moving more and more often." "And you didn't even think of sharing these thoughts with me? Or at least warning me that you were going to Moscow?" "Perhaps only tomorrow, so you can consider yourself warned in advance." "And how long do you plan to stay there, in your capitals? You were just there a month ago, when the will was read. Will you keep going back and forth every month?" "I don't know exactly yet. There's too much to do, and I'm inexperienced in such matters. Grandma's lawyers will help." "I see. Well, it had to be done sometime." David withdrew. "Did you prepare anything for me to eat? At least for a couple of days?" "David, the freezer is full. Cook whatever you want." "Don't you think you're behaving badly?" David tried to go on the offensive. "No, I don't." Joanna smiled friendly. "What? Do you want to pick a fight on purpose? This sudden change. You've adopted a new tone in conversation. Do you feel rich and independent?" "Don't envy me so openly." Joanna winked at her husband just as friendly. "I'm genuinely tired and don't want any quarrels or showdowns. I just want to pack calmly and leave for my business." "Fine, leave. Just don't be surprised by what you see when you get back." "Excellent." Joanna smiled carelessly. "Relax. Don't be such a bore." David fell silent, snorted severely, and didn't utter a word to his wife until late at night. He sat down at his computer, playing his favorite strategy game, which she couldn't stand, considering it too aggressive. Joanna paid no attention to anything, packing for half the night. In the morning, when David was still asleep, nose buried in the pillow, he opened his eyes and saw Joanna, skillfully made up, in a tank top and jeans. "Bye-bye, I'm off." She waved cheerfully in front of her husband's nose, grabbed her wheeled bag, and headed for the front door with a dancing gait. Even the squeak of the key in the lock seemed mockingly cheerful to David. She was happy to be leaving, and wasn't even trying to hide it. Had she managed to meet some old Moscow codger at that funeral? Did she imagine herself a femme fatale? And just to tolerate these antics of hers, he had been making up excuses not to see Sarah for the past month. What a fool he was. "Sarah, dear, what are your plans for today?" David asked affectionately a couple of minutes later, sighing submissively into the phone receiver. Joanna was seen off at the station by her mother and Rita. Without consulting each other, they didn't rush to leave, watching the train for a long time, even when there was no sound or trace of it left on the horizon. "Maybe we should buy a pie, Rita?" Mom suggested hesitantly to her friend. Or do you also think station pies are poison? In my day, they called them sick makers. Oh, Aunt Jenny, Rita confessed, I love sick makers so much. Eating the pies wrapped in flimsy napkins, they talked about Joanna. I never would have thought our Jeanette was so courageous, Rita continued her revelations. You were much more spirited in school, too. I only look more spirited, but in reality, I'm just louder, like an empty drum, Rita laughed. I'm scared to imagine what I would do if I were in a situation like Joanna's. I would definitely throw a stupid loud tantrum, giving my husband reason to be glad that such a hysterical woman was leaving him. After all, if a girl is hysterical, it means she's still hurt. I couldn't have played the carefree heiress who doesn't care about her husband like that. But Joanna could. Yes, but in reality, it was very hard for her. I know that, Aunt Jenny sighed. My only hope is that a change of scenery will help her cheer up. She's been dreaming of traveling for a long time, but something always got in the way. David was always content with fishing and friends' dachas. Leo is sent to sports camps, and my daughter just kept putting off her life. You see how lucky it is that Grandma decided to leave everything to Joanna, Rita picked up. What if your Queen of Spades was a real witch who foresaw and knew everything? Ella could do that, Aunt Jenny nodded with a smile. She had never felt dislike for her mother-in-law, and now she even remembered this original personality with interest. How did Ella manage it? She always did things her way, considered only herself, but no one was angry with her, and all her ex-husbands congratulated her on New Year's. A witch, definitely a witch. Joanna, funny to say, was riding in a compartment carriage for the first time in her life. She tolerated travel well, was absolutely unpretentious, undemanding of comfort. She liked fellow travelers, as long as they weren't aggressive. But suddenly, out of pure curiosity, she decided to ride to Moscow in a compartment. The price wasn't exorbitant. She wasn't planning to stroll through expensive boutiques and social events. She would indeed attend to business, and in her free time, she would walk through places she knew indirectly from descriptions in her favorite Bulgakov. She definitely had to walk around Patriarch's Ponds. Someday. She also thought that day when they met, it's interesting, if her father had been alive, would Ella have left the inheritance to her son, not her granddaughter? Nothing could be said for sure about her. None of Joanna's acquaintances had or have such an unpredictable grandmother. That's a fact. It was vacation season, so the carriage was full. From the departure station, a very young couple in love and a silent man around 40 traveled in her compartment with Joanna. The couple was absorbed in each other and didn't sit still, and Joanna was grateful to the man for being as engrossed in his thoughts as she was, and for being able to be almost invisible. A funny ability for such a tall and thin person. Such people should probably be noisy in a confined space like a compartment. Joanna glanced around a couple of times, as if to make sure he wasn't watching her, and continued to think her thoughts. The further she traveled from her hometown, the lighter her heart became. Long journeys generally calmed her down a lot. Interesting. Were there any gypsies in their family line? She should ask her mother. Are you being met? Her compartment neighbor politely inquired when they were about 15 minutes away from Moscow. Need help with a taxi, for example? I hardly have any luggage, just a light sports bag with summer clothes. Joanna smiled carelessly. I'm here on business, so yes, I'll be met. But thank you for the offer. Imagine, they exchanged only a few words the whole trip, and the person offers help. From the first glance, Jenny really was right. The house that Joanna had recently considered her own, she left behind. In the house that no longer felt like hers, she settled into Ella's spacious apartment, which she had initially firmly intended to sell. Why such palatial rooms when you could buy 2 cozy apartments for that money? But now she wanted to get rid of Ella's apartment less and less. It had a beautifully furnished classical kitchen dining room. In old movies, people sip tea from Chinese porcelain in such dining rooms. By the way, suitable porcelain was also available. And there were also living rooms with a piano and excellent reproductions of famous paintings, the mistress's bedroom resembling a boudoir, and a study combined with a library. On the way to Moscow, Joanna thought she would feel uncomfortable, maybe even creepy, staying here alone, and still considered moving to a hotel. To her great surprise, Joanna immediately felt at home in this apartment. She was even more amazed when she began to realize that she and Ella had quite a lot in common. Joanna wouldn't want to change the curtains on the windows, the dishes, or the paintings and photographs on the walls. Even the books in the library that she had time to look at seemed to have been chosen to her taste. Joanna walked around the house, sat in the armchairs, and mentally thanked Ella. The attractive studio with modern renovations, also part of Joanna's inheritance, was rented by a young married couple, nice people who spent most of the day at work. Joanna gladly assured them that she had no intention of selling the property, raising the rent, or looking for new tenants, and went to the dacha. Joanna herself and her parents, too, had never had any dachas, and no one complained about their absence. Joanna's father, Michael, used to say that in a small green town surrounded by forests and lakes, it was ridiculous to sit in one place when you could discover new corners of nature every weekend. And they did just that as a family. But Ella had a dacha. And as Rita correctly guessed, there was no talk of vegetable beds there. A vegetable garden and Ella. That's even absurd to imagine. Ella's dacha resembled a refuge from worldly hustle and bustle. Deep within the old apple orchard, overgrown with tall grass, stood a country house, not very well maintained from the outside, but a solid two-story building, old-fashioned, resembling a small estate. From the inside, it turned out to be much cozier than the outside, striking in its cleanliness and neatness. The lawyer accompanying Joanna, Mr. Robert, even quietly apologized, noticing her surprise. "Did I forget to mention that Ella's housekeeper, Martha, lives in the house? Former now. Forgive me. Here she is coming out to meet us." "Good afternoon," Joanna said, somehow embarrassed, as soon as she saw the woman descending the stairs towards them. "Hello," she responded with a friendly, warm smile. "My name is Martha Egorenko. Did you have a good trip? Perhaps some tea, coffee, or something stronger?" "Joanna," a flustered Joanna introduced herself. "Excuse the intrusion. I thought no one lived here anymore. And what about you?" Joanna didn't know how to phrase the question that immediately came to mind correctly so as not to offend the woman, and fell silent, choosing her words. "Don't worry," Martha Igorenko assured her, understanding everything at once, almost cheerfully. "Everything's fine. I'll tell and explain everything now. Let's go to the dining room." And she went ahead, leading Joanna and Mr. Robert with her. Martha Igorenko was immediately likable. A lively lady around 60, strong and fit, radiating friendliness and warmth. "Who's driving?" she winked, opening a carved wooden box. "I can treat the passenger to my signature cranberry liqueur. Ella really appreciated it." "I'm a perpetual passenger," Joanna smiled. "I don't drive. Treat me." "I call Martha by Ella's name. I got used to it over many years. If it's unpleasant for you, I can properly—" "No, call her whatever you're used to," Joanna hurried to reassure her. "Excuse me, I really didn't know you were staying here after Grandma's death. No one told me. Who pays you? You maintain such exemplary order. How much do I owe you?" "Oh," Martha Egorenko laughed, touched. "What about the fact that I pay nothing for housing and breathe in these grand rooms, this fresh apple orchard? Didn't you think that I myself could be charged for that? Actually, Ella left me a little money too, and it's a significant amount for me." Was the will about Olga Egorenko? That's me. Don't you remember who got what? I wasn't paying attention, Joanna admitted. Now that's a generous girl, a true aristocrat. Martha Egorenko praised her. Anyway, seriously, I really live here like in a sanatorium. There are little shops with the essentials nearby, 2 of them. And what they don't have, neighbors from the city bring. The neighbors are good, sociable, and quiet. They don't pry into anything, and our plots aren't cramped, as you can see. Just tell me, dear Joanna, by when you need the house vacated and when it's convenient for you to show and tell me everything. I can do it right now, but it's up to you. And where will you go if... Joanna didn't finish the sentence. Well, I'm not the court of Madrid to have such secrets, Martha Igorenko assured her, almost cheerfully. I'll go to my daughter and Vladimir. There's room, my son-in-law is good. I won't be a surprise to them. I would have returned there in my old age anyway. Everyone knew that. Of course, if Ella had lived longer, I would have worked for her for another 10 years. Although Martha Igorenko was both demanding and talkative, Joanna understood that the woman didn't want to leave this house. I'd be happy to give you that opportunity, Joanna confessed. But I'm not the type of person who needs domestic staff. I can even do repairs myself, I had to learn. Specialists charge a lot. I'm sorry. What apologies, my dear girl. Martha Igorenko was touched again. But I would advise you not to decide immediately what to do with all the property. Think it over a bit. Another month or 2 will pass. The first confused passions will subside, and everything will fall into place in your head. Absolutely agree, Mr. Robert offered his approving voice. When there's no acute need for money, that's how you should proceed. That's what I'll do. Thank you, everyone, Joanna decided cheerfully. And then let's walk around the house. While we're at it, will there be apples? Plenty, Martha Egorenko assured her. I do take care of the trees. Mr. Robert asked permission to stay in the garden in an old rattan chair, smoke, and make a couple of business calls, while Martha Igorenko began showing Joanna her new possessions, like a seasoned estate guide. I don't know what I'll sell now, Joanna said, half in jest, half seriously. I like Grandma's apartment, and I like this house too. And for the money the tenants pay for the studio, I work for a month in my city. That's what I'm saying. You have something to think about. Martha Egorenko waved her hand. What if, while you're thinking, I find tenants for this house? How do you feel about that? Do you agree? It suddenly occurred to Joanna. You're the owner. It's your decision. Martha Igorenko didn't immediately grasp. You didn't even ask me. No, you didn't understand, Joanna clarified. If I ask you to stay here, look after the house and keep it clean for the tenants, would that suit you? They'll pay me rent. I'll pay you a salary from that money, and the house won't be abandoned while I'm sorting out my affairs and problems. My father used to say that a private house shouldn't be left without people. It deteriorates and falls apart faster that way. Your father is right, Martha Igorenko declared, pleased to find a kindred spirit. Houses are not apartments in an anthill, a human hive. They are like that. They have their own soul. And I won't be coy. Such an offer would suit me very well. Only you understand, dear Joanna, there's a delicate point here. I'm also a living person. I have to like your tenants, and they shouldn't find me repulsive either. This is an important point for the position of a housekeeper. In an office, you cannot care about everyone and just earn money. But here it's close proximity, living under one roof. I wouldn't even think of housing someone you find unpleasant, Joanna said, surprised. I'll send everyone here so you can look at each other and decide if it works for all of you or not. You agree? That you've decided to rent out the house seriously just like that? Martha Igorenko was taken aback. And? Is it a bad decision? I must do something to get things in order on this trip. Otherwise, it will turn out that I just came for a change of scenery. And that's also necessary sometimes, her interlocutor said with conviction. To rest from work, from household chores. Excuse the immodest question. Do you have a family? I have a son. I have a mother. I have a husband, too. He still thinks he's there. But for me, he's almost an ex. Oh, really? Martha Igorenko commented cautiously, looking at Joanna sympathetically, but didn't dare to ask further. Joanna herself suddenly wanted to tell this woman everything in brief. An ordinary infidelity. He met someone else, wanted to leave the family. I accidentally overheard my David himself telling his mother that he chose to live with the woman he loved, and his mother-in-law was urging him to wait, just in case I got a good inheritance. Her son is selling out. He even resented what kind of honest guy his mother thought he was. What kind of honest guy I was married to. Is that what you thought? Martha Igorenko asked again. Aha, Joanna confirmed. But it turned out I was wrong. Perhaps the scale of my inheritance was too much for the guy. Neither I nor he, nor anyone in our families had ever been particularly wealthy. He became an attentive family man, straight home after work, weekends only with family. He decided to give up his love. I see him wandering around sadly, but he's holding on. Well done. We need a new car, he says. There. Mr. Gigolo, Martha Igorenko shook her head, so artistically that Joanna couldn't help but smile. And you decided not to tolerate this scoundrel? Aha. I decided to free him from forced lying. He could have hated me so much in a few years that he would poison me, like in old English detective stories, Joanna snorted. And you're a clever girl, Martha simply approved. I would have done the same. Have you completely said goodbye to him, or did you just leave for now to think things over? I just left for now. In the evening, I informed him that I was leaving in the morning. I wanted to see his reaction. It was interesting. I saw it. Now I'm even more confident in my decision. I'll return when my son comes back from sports camp, and I'll announce to David that I've found someone else here. Let him prepare for a divorce. And of course, there isn't one yet? Joanna laughed, surprised. Why, of course, her interlocutor scoffed. Such a charming girl is unlikely to go unnoticed for even a day. And I'm not flattering you. Female laughter. Mr. Robert emerged from behind a shaggy currant bush. Ms. Joanna, forgive me for interrupting your pleasant conversation, but I'm being met at the station. If we can leave for the city in about half an hour, we'll have time to discuss everything on the way, talk about our further actions. I'll take you directly to your place. All right, Mr. Robert, Joanna assured him. I've already decided everything. We can go right now. Or would you like to stay here? Martha Igorenko suggested. No plans for the evening. Fresh linen is available. The guest bedroom is in perfect order, like in a luxury hotel. And in the morning, after you've slept well, you can calmly return to the city. How does my plan sound? Well, it's a good plan, Joanna approved. I would have been too shy to invite myself, but I'm happy with the invitation. I've become quite bold with you. You're at home, Martha Igorenko reminded her, tapping her forehead. And both women said almost in unison, Go on, Mr. Robert. A very, very long time ago, probably in childhood, Joanna hadn't slept as soundly as she did that night on the veranda of her house near Moscow. Martha Igorenko offered her any room of her choice to sleep in, particularly urging her to take the beautiful guest room, which indeed resembled a cozy room in a country hotel, but Joanna chose the veranda. It's cooler here and the windows are huge. I'll be able to see the stars, she explained. Joanna didn't get a chance to admire the stars, falling asleep quickly after a long and pleasant day. And in the morning, having returned to the city, she sat down to compose an advertisement on a real estate website about renting out the country house with the services of a resident housekeeper and a large plot occupied by a picturesque garden. She pondered how best to phrase the requirements for tenants and suddenly flinched at the phone call. It was David calling. Completely abandoned the family? He asked immediately instead of a greeting. Hello, Joanna replied with friendly indifference. Why abandoned? I call Leo at camp every day, morning and evening, and send photos from Moscow and messages. He's doing great. But you probably know that yourself. You talk to him too, don't you? And you have nothing left to say to me? And you to me? Joanna smiled into the receiver. I've been busy with things all these days, sorted some things out, decided some things already. But you know what? I'll tell you about it at home, I think. I won't hang around here. I'll come back earlier if there are tickets for tomorrow. I'll take one for tomorrow. No need to drag it out. So everything is all right? David asked, deciding to restrain his irritation. Completely, Joanna confirmed. And indeed, she immediately bought a train ticket. Not for tomorrow, but for the day after tomorrow. She warned Mr. Robert about the train. He assured her that she could leave with a light heart. Her personal presence in Moscow was not required for now. However, was she sure she could completely trust someone with something like choosing tenants for the dacha? I plan to return soon, Joanna explained. Maybe even for good. That's why I need to leave urgently now. Yes, it's better not to accumulate loose ends in business. Mr. Robert immediately understood and approved. And what? Do you think people willing to rent such a large, expensive dacha can be found so quickly? She inquired. Usually not, but sometimes it happens. Well, as a last resort, in the modern world, there are video calls. If someone needs to move in urgently, you can get some idea of the people that way. And I'll help you with my experienced eye, give you my assessment, and I can quickly draw up a contract if necessary. It's standard. I'll also consult with Martha Igorenko if anything comes up, Joanna added. That's also a sound idea. Women in her profession often give accurate assessments of people. A good housekeeper isn't just about sweeping with a broom, as some snobs think. Joanna had nothing to add to that remark. She had never had to be either a housekeeper or a snob. She called a taxi and went to say goodbye to Martha Egorenko. They still needed to agree on how they would select tenants, and Joanna didn't like sharing her thoughts on the phone, preferring face-to-face communication. Dear Joanna, don't worry, Martha Egorenko assured her. If we really come across decent people and one's willing to pay such a price, I won't let them get away just like that. I'll persuade them that they won't find a better option. I can also sit and play with children well, of course. I get tired of wild ones. And I'm not a bad cook, unless, of course, people are used to gourmet cuisine. I might not make artichokes with anchovies every day, like in the best houses in Paris, but my pies and borscht are excellent. I won't be modest. I understood immediately that you are a treasure, Joanna laughed. No, the treasure here is you, Martha Igorenko objected warmly, as if someone was about to argue with her. You're offering me to continue working for the same salary Ella paid me, in a familiar environment. Otherwise, I would have had to lead a completely retired life. And I don't want to spend the money Ella willed me on myself. I'd rather help my daughter's family. And I can still earn for myself for now. I go on vacation to the sea every year during the velvet season. I would be sad without the sea. So thank you, dear Joanna, and I'll try to live up to your trust. Why do you look so tired? I'm not tired. I'm just afraid of returning home, Joanna confessed. I've decided everything, and now I'm scared. I'm used to not quarreling with anyone, not getting involved in adventures. And now I'm playing the part of a fiery redhead, a decisive heiress, but I'm just an ordinary provincial coward. Oh, you are a storyteller. Martha Igorenko admired her. With your idea of telling your husband, you're the spitting image of Ella. She also loved making things up about herself, and everyone believed her, and everything worked out perfectly. So I'll be waiting for you here with your son and mother and keeping decent tenants hooked so they don't get away. Joanna decided to inform David of her arrival time. It wasn't part of her plan to meet Sarah, who might well be in the apartment with David. Shall I meet you at the station? David asked. No need. I don't have heavy luggage. I'll get there myself. Thank you for your concern. There were notes of sarcasm in David's voice, but now they only made Joanna smile. In the morning before leaving, she called her mother and warned her that she would be staying with her for the night and would live with her until she moved into Ella's apartment. Are you sure you finally decided? Mom sighed. What if Leo doesn't want to? Mom, let's talk at home. The apartment that Joanna had so recently considered her home greeted her with dirty floors and a pyramid of unwashed dishes in the kitchen sink. A couple of greasy flies circled above the pyramid, eagerly looking for something to feed on, while another pair crawled across a frying pan with leftover fried potatoes. Hello, it's cozy here, Joanna announced without a hint of hysteria, almost cheerfully. Hello, her husband replied from behind the computer, as best I could after work in my wife's absence. Joanna shrugged. If you like it, it's your business. Joanna replied friendly. What, aren't you the mistress here anymore? And suddenly, as if understanding something from his wife's gaze, David abruptly changed his tone. All right, Jenny dear, we've had our fun. The boss has been driving everyone crazy. I'm seriously thinking of quitting with this attitude. As I understand it, we're not struggling financially now. There's time to find a decent job. Yes, I understand everything, David. I'm exactly the same. If it weren't for this unexpected inheritance that fell on me, I wouldn't have decided to leave a job I didn't like. Stability can be much worse than people usually tell themselves. Now I'll take a shower, change, and go quit. Your vacation just started. You could have gone somewhere, David reminded her with bewilderment, clearly not understanding what she was getting at. I'm not a viper, Joanna explained. My boss hasn't done anything bad to me for me to pull such a trick on him. By the time my vacation officially ends, he can find someone else for my position. But everyday matters can wait, Joanna dear. If you're talking about the mess in the house, yes, I admit, it's my fault. You've never been a bore and haven't made a fuss over trifles. And I'm not going to change now, Joanna confirmed. Anyway, there's no point in preparing for such announcements for a long time. It's better to be direct and honest. We need to get a divorce, David. Her husband got out of the computer chair with an unexpected crash. So this is a condition of the will, is it? He asked with a smirk, hiding his irritation. David, I wouldn't joke about this if you knew me even a little. I've met another man, and I don't want to live a double life. And carefree heiresses love sweet boys, her husband sneered dismissively, putting on a sickly sweet smile. What kind of boys? Ignoring his sarcasm, Joanna continued, And Madam now moves in circles where it's indecent to have husbands like me. Only those with status are valued. David, I'm not insulting you, and I hope for understanding. I've simply met someone else. The same thing could have happened to you. I'm not claiming anything at all. I'll only take my and Leo's things, clothes, and toys. David shook off his mocking macho pose and stared at his unperturbed wife, realizing in an instant that she wasn't joking. He let out his last vengeful card. You won't get anything from me for the child. It was already past midnight, discussing her divorce and resignation announcements with Rita and her mother. Joanna smiled sadly. I never would have thought it would be harder for me to upset my boss than my own husband. I thought the hardest question would be about my son. But David only remembered Leo in connection with money, when he said he wouldn't give anything for him. Well, he'll have to pay alimony by law anyway, Rita sighed mockingly. Stop pretending. You know perfectly well I'm not talking about that. Joanna waved it away. If it weren't for this inheritance, I would never have known what kind of person I lived with for 12 years. That's what scares me. Generally, in what relationships? Oh, girls! Mom, like an arbiter, took both of them by the hands. Then none of us should get involved in anything. When we love, we all want to believe in the best. And we do believe. Otherwise, life on the planet would have died out long ago. Jeanette, Aunt Jenny, let's just have one conversation without complex philosophy. Rita smiled forgivingly. You're lucky, dear Joanna, that you not only learned David's true nature, but also left him yourself, without damage to your self-esteem. He has only one consolation left, to invent a beautiful legend for Sarah, that he left you for love. Honestly, I don't care, Joanna waved it away. It's like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I promised my boss to stay for a week at most before quitting. He wants me to hand over my duties to a new employee. Apparently, he already has someone in mind. I agreed. A week is not a year. And I'll go back to Moscow to look for tenants for the dacha and a good school for Leo. I still need to think about how to prepare him. What to say. I'll help, Mom assured her. I'll think of something too, Rita promised. As Joanna somehow foresaw, there weren't many people interested in renting such a large house. For the summer, people are happy with a small house in a gardening cooperative, Martha Igorenko said understandingly. And not everyone is ready to live outside the city in winter. If it weren't for my salary, you could lower the price, and tenants would be found immediately. I feel like I should start packing for Vladimir. Dear Joanna, if you miss your daughter and want to leave, just say so. Martha Igorenko, Joanna asked. I told you honestly right away. I would have worked for another 10 years. Changing course sharply again, Martha Igorenko continued. But so far, we haven't come across a single noblewoman ready to pay extra for a house with a housekeeper. Let's wait a bit longer. Not much time has passed. It's too early to draw conclusions. And Martha Igorenko meekly agreed to wait. Joanna spent nights sometimes at her place outside the city, sometimes in the city apartment, walked around Moscow, filmed videos for Leo, whom his grandmother was supposed to bring to the capital soon as his camp session ended. Leo was sad that his father had almost stopped calling. A week after Joanna's departure, Ms. Pauline called with the aim of expressing everything she thought about their immoral family. It turned out that Eugenia had once married a rich boy from the capital, hoping for a beautiful life, but had miscalculated. But her daughter decided to make up for both of them. As soon as she got her grandmother's inheritance, she ruthlessly threw out her unpretentious but honest and decent husband and the father of her child from her life. Status didn't even stop her from doing that. Joanna's mother's voice, though understanding, was tired. And Joanna called her mother-in-law immediately after talking to her mother. Ms. Pauline, if you are overcome with feelings, express them to me, not to my mother. She has absolutely nothing to do with this story. And even better, shift your attention to your son. A strange silence from his mother followed. And suddenly, a silly childish prank came to Joanna's mind, and she added after the prolonged pause, Do you really think I don't have the means for a private investigation? This is regarding your son's honesty and decency. Ms. Pauline said goodbye in confusion. At least now she definitely won't bother Mom, Joanna justified her invention. We have a long-term tenant who has appeared, she announced in a lively voice. He couldn't reach you. Your line was busy. So he called me. He asked when he could come see the house. He asked pertinent questions. Wasn't scared of the price. Was polite. I remembered that you were planning to come to me for lunch tomorrow, and I took the risk of setting a time for him 2 hours before lunch myself. Did I do the right thing? Or will you call him back and change the time? We won't change anything. You did well. I'll come earlier, Joanna promised. So many events had happened in her once unhurried life recently in such a short time that Joanna wasn't at all surprised by the new little surprise. When the man who wanted to rent Ella's picturesque dacha got out of the car, Joanna recognized him as her fellow traveler, the silent neighbor from the compartment who had offered her help with her luggage when she was traveling to Moscow after the memorable conversation she had overheard in the hospital. The fellow traveler also recognized Joanna immediately, smiled in surprise, and then became embarrassed. "I remember you," he said just in case, as if Joanna might not have noticed. "My name is Arthur. I need a house." "Everyone needs a house," Joanna smiled. "How many people are there?" "There's one of us," Arthur replied. "I already understood from the description on the website that this is—" Arthur said that he was an architect and landscape designer. He had his own bureau. He had been working remotely with Moscow for a long time, visiting often. He had even managed to buy an apartment here. But it had remained empty all these years. His mother absolutely didn't want to move to Moscow, and he stayed with her. She wasn't the type of person to live alone after his father's death. And he didn't need it. He was mobile. He used to come to the capital for business, did everything, and went back. And recently, she passed away. He decided to move here permanently. And suddenly he realized that he wasn't a city person. He wanted to live in a house outside the city. He bought a plot of land there and is building a small house with a pond according to his own design. And while it's being built, he decided to rent a place. Martha Igorenko immediately and unconditionally liked Arthur, and she invited him to lunch directly. "Joanna and I are actually going to have lunch here and don't intend to starve and wait until you leave. So welcome to the table." "I can't refuse such an honest and heartfelt invitation," Arthur was delighted. "It's such happiness. A house with its own Mrs. Hudson." After lunch, having managed to agree on the time for signing the contract, Joanna saw the tenant off to the gate and couldn't help but remark, "On the train, you seemed like a very quiet person, but now it turns out it's the opposite." "Yes, I'm a chatterbox," Arthur admitted with a smile when he's not working. "And you seemed very focused on the train then, immersed in serious problems. So I didn't bother you with conversation, although I really wanted to get acquainted." "Well, you are perceptive. You're a dangerous person." Joanna also couldn't help but smile. Now is a much better time. Then I really wasn't up for anything or anyone. A year later, having come to visit her daughter and grandson in Moscow, Eugenia, chuckling good-naturedly, told Joanna simple news about mutual acquaintances. "I don't know from whom, but Ms. Pauline heard that you were indeed going to marry a gentleman from the capital, that I was invited to the wedding," and then she just exploded. "Is she calling you again?" "No, when she sees me, she actually crosses to the other side of the street. My friend Irene, it turns out, works with her new daughter-in-law, Sarah. She says Sarah looks sad now. Her mother-in-law told her to her face that she ruined her son's life, that he could be living in a huge apartment in Moscow or a mansion of his choice right now, and because of Sarah, the family destroyer, he is now forced to languish his whole life." In short, Pauline said a lot of nonsense in her usual style. Everyone feels sorry for Sarah now, of course, except for those who gloat that she shouldn't have gotten involved with a married man. "I'm on the sympathetic side," Joanna announced. "If it weren't for Sarah, I wouldn't have met Arthur."